for our segment on education programs. Our first speaker will be Dr. Keith Clement, professor of California State University in Fresno, chair of the Workforce Development and Education Subcommittee, California Cybersecurity Task Force.
My name is Keith Clement, and I'm a professor of criminology at California State University, Fresno, and I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the California Cybersecurity Task Force Workforce Development Education Subcommittee chairperson. And so in that capacity, it is great to have everybody participating and attending the convening today. And I would like to give some kind of big 70,000 foot big picture views of a couple of observations of what one can expect to see today and what we'll be talking about and the reasons why we are here, of course. So first of all, I would like to say that it's great to have our representatives from industry and employers, both the public and the private sector. I appreciate the government organizations and government agency folks that are in attendance as well. And of course, our education and higher education community colleagues as well. One thing that we know about cybersecurity and workforce development is that it requires major partners and key stakeholders to be involved and engage and collaborate and work together on the development of these education and workforce development solutions. So I appreciate to have everybody here. It's amazing to get everybody here. And as subcommittee chair, I think that's really one of the aspects of this project that I am personally most proud of is the facilitation and coordination and the bringing together of various folks to support what we are calling a California cybersecurity career education pipeline and pathway that is supported at all levels of education, K through 12, our 2-year school community college friends, our 4-year University of California and California State University colleagues as well, and all of the employers, both small and medium-sized businesses, of course, our large industry. And one thing that we are aware of today is that all businesses, whatever the size, whatever the industry, whatever the nature of the business, we are all IT firms. We all rely on networks and computers and data, and that's where we are today. And so it is extra essential to protect these very sensitive pieces of data, whether it's personal or business or, again, there's a very ubiquitous feel to IT and cybersecurity today. That is, it's everywhere. It touches on every aspect of our daily lives. It starts from when you're a newborn in an incubator and they give you a warm, cooing tablet device. And we understand that most people throughout the course of their lives will have this tablet or this device or the smartphone or whatever it is that you're using to watch this presentation, this view today. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I view a convening of this sort to have 4 major principles and themes that are driving our show today. The first is education programs. And of course, that's the panel that we're on right now. We'll be hearing from our colleagues from the California State University and our colleagues from the UC Office of the President and our colleagues from the Cal Community Colleges. But we need to talk about cybersecurity education programs, that is degree programs and also certificate programs. We need to make sure that all aspects of the talent model in cybersecurity is handled. So there are folks that are going to need some math heavy, science heavy, programming heavy, computer sciencey kinds of 4-year degree programs to really meet their occupational goals, their career aspirations as they get older. But one thing that we also understand, and particularly industry understands, is the importance of certificate programs. And a certificate program is obviously vastly different than a degree program, needless to say. And one of the things that we would like to make sure that the certificate programs that we're developing all have a workforce development component to them. After all, that is really one of the troubles that IT and tech and cyber and information systems and software development and many of these types of majors really have, is the need for hands-on engagement, the need to learn by doing. There is no substitute for experience. The textbook might be a great read, but it's certainly not going to install that firewall for you. So we need to have a workforce development component. We also are looking at what we are calling a apprenticeship and a pre-apprenticeship strategy to handle the workforce development component to it. The third part of today's meeting is to have a candid discussion with the cyber and IT and the many other employers that are currently on this call, that are on this webinar. That is that employers and the education communities need to get together with our partners in government to make sure the education programs that are being developed meet the needs of industry, they meet the needs of employers. They are putting, when we are graduating candidates from these programs, employers need to rest assured that these programs meet their needs. They handle the issues that their firm has, that it takes care of their business. And so it is essential to be very involved with the employers. So of course we'll have an employer panelist or an employer panel filled with panelists who have actually done quite a bit of hiring themselves in this area. They will have the opportunity to talk about what they're looking for and not what they're looking for when interviewing and hiring cybersecurity entry-level professionals. And of course, the fourth major theme that we have today is the discussion of diversity and inclusivity and equity and an even playing field in the area of cybersecurity. And that means both in terms of education, that is, everybody has access and availability to these education programs wherever they are across the state of California. But furthermore, we need to make sure that those that do not have a vast tech experience or education to rely upon are able to enter this with what we are calling a soft start. That is, that we want to make sure that people that are entering the field, particularly those that are drawn from underrepresented or historically underrepresented backgrounds, have the skills necessary for success in this area. We do not want to set folks up to not succeed here. We are trying to solve a workforce development problem. We are trying to move people through a pipeline and a pathway to get them to help out with some of California and the nation's cyber workforce development education issues. Towards that end, we have two strategies. These two strategies are intended to develop a career pipeline pathway in the state of California to develop the next 50,000 cybersecurity professionals for entry-level employment from the years 2020 to 2030. It is a big picture strategy. That is, it lays out how to develop the blueprint and framework for a cyber career pipeline that stretches across all levels of education, but it really begins to take off in conjunction with what the California Department of Education calls career technical education, that begins in approximately the 6th and the 7th grade. So this strategy, of course, covers all levels of education. It talks about the value of cyber competitions, hackathons, coding camps, and extracurricular activities, in addition to a discussion of the model curriculum that exists currently in California relating to ICT, information communications technology, and also cybersecurity as a part of that. And the objective, of course, is to get people to work. As we all know, about 1/3 of the economy, American and state economy, has dried up as a result of COVID-19. And as a result of that, we now are left in a job situation that was alike what it was back in the Great Depression. it is essential to get people back to work. So while the strategy, the cybersecurity workforce development education strategy is the big picture, the first tactic or the first step in the process is through the development of what we call the California Cybersecurity Essential Workforce Youth Pre and Registered Apprenticeship Talent Pipeline, which lays out a pacing guide that describes the exact steps that a candidate, a student candidate that is interested in a career in cybersecurity would take. And it begins again about 5th and 6th grade at this phase 1 of operations, and it lays out the various components at the middle school and high school levels that should culminate in a student graduating from high school with the equivalent of either a CompTIA Security Plus certificate or its Cisco Network Academy equivalent, or the Red Hat Linux cloud and security sequence of courses. So in any case, there's some programming here and some hands-on labs, etc. But the purpose of the Essential Workforce Talent Pipeline is to provide the California COVID-19 pandemic response, first responders, healthcare, medical, small and medium-sized businesses that have all been hit hard by this COVID-19, and further the evidence of cyber tomfoolery going on, cyber shenanigans of these very agencies, these very organizations, and the need that we have to protect our systems, our data, our networks, our institutions, our companies, our government, et cetera, et cetera. So it is through the development of a California cybersecurity career pipeline pathway and essential workforce pre and registered apprenticeship process that we can begin to reduce the significant numbers of California's cybersecurity workforce capacity gap that we have, estimated at 70,000 California cybersecurity jobs currently available, over 500,000 jobs available currently at the national level, and over 1.5 million jobs internationally in this area. So we all have a workforce development issue today. We need plans and solutions to take care of these issues. And I am so pleased today to have the opportunity to introduce and speak with, all of us speak with, representatives from the California State University Chancellor's Office, from the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and of course our colleagues from the University of California Office of the President. I certainly hope that you enjoy the rest of the panel speakers today. I certainly hope that you find this event to be a very worthwhile event, and looking forward to hearing from many of you in the coming days as we move this industry convening from a virtual meeting into a ecosystem where we are putting qualified candidates finishing education programs together with industry employers on the public and private sector side, as well as putting folks to work in our government organizations in the area of IT and cybersecurity. Thank you very much. The host will introduce our next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. Next, I'd like to introduce Sheni Weber, Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development, California Community College Chancellor's Office.
Thank you, Dr. Clement, for this invitation to speak at this event. I am Sheni Weber. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development at the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. My job is to consider how our system delivers the workforce that our state needs now and in the future. The work that we do is focused on career pathways to careers with good living wages that supports families and communities. It's not just students who need these clear career pathways, but also working adults and professionals who can also benefit from having clear career pathways particularly in the growing industry sectors that we know of, and cybersecurity and IT is one of them. And especially during this time of rapid change where jobs and job skills are evolving quickly as we're grappling with the future of work, which really has been accelerated by this pandemic. Keith mentioned earlier the work to create a cyber career pipeline of 50,000 in the next 10 years. I've also seen estimates about figures on the cybersecurity workforce shortage, either nationally or around the world, anywhere from 1 to 3 million in the next couple years. So clearly we have a lot of work to do. The way I see it is cybersecurity is part of an ecosystem with very specific interconnections to privacy, to cloud computing, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence or AI, big data. I think you can even argue that there's tentacles to areas such as sociology, psychology, and many other areas that not mentioned here, and probably business. And we also know that cybersecurity is about threat assessment, and obviously one of the threats that we're facing for the industry is not having enough qualified workforce. But we also see sort of a catch-22 in trying to develop this workforce. What the industry really wants and needs are experienced cybersecurity professionals. We all know that. That's the preference. The students we produce often do not have much experience, if any. Apprenticeship models are a great way to provide people with this learning and on-the-job training at the same time. And one of our colleges, College of the Canyons, is doing good work there. Apprenticeship programs, though, alone is not enough, because one of the things about apprenticeship programs is it can be costly and it can be challenging to scale. Finding willing employer partners can be challenging for us as well. So the question becomes, what other kinds of earn and learn models can be developed and can we put in place to grow the IT and cybersecurity talent pool? What models can we put in place that will support lifelong learning once you enter the IT field? We also need to find more ways to get people to choose IT as a career of choice. That is a challenge before us. One way to do that may be for all of us, public, private, and nonprofit sectors, to band together to mount a very ambitious consumer literacy campaign. Everyone needs to be educated in layman terms on the basics of what I call the invisible technology that is driving our lives today. It's not just about cybersecurity. We know AI is working in the background. We use cloud computing every day. Internet of Things means we can plug all kinds of devices into our network. Machine learning, all of these topics, what they are, what they do, why is it important for us to become savvy consumers? It's important because of a lot of issues around privacy. Many are concerned about that. How do we understand how these things matter to us, every one of us, right, every day, not just to the experts or people who choose it as a career? For those who remember, in 2010, NIST initiated a national public awareness and education campaign to promote cybersecurity. The National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, which is called NICE, had its dual goal of having a cyber savvy citizenship and a cyber capable workforce. It's about raising awareness of consumers, enhancing the cybersecurity education, improving the structure, preparation, and training of cybersecurity workforce. So this idea of increasing savviness and education of consumers as a way of developing the workforce is not new. It's also a great way to address the issue of equity and access and to increase the diversity of the information and security workforce. As more and more devices come on the market, everyone needs to understand that anything connected to an internet is accessible. I've heard about the people hacking baby monitors, hot tubs, and printers. Even our cars have become very expensive computers that can potentially be hacked. The pandemic itself has shown us how highly interconnected the world is. We all know that now. The internet has fundamentally changed the way we live, the social, the cultural, the business, and political experiences of people, even the educational experiences of people. Rather than just focusing on cybersecurity workforce, what we need to do is look at clear information about career pathways and the various doors that anyone can enter into this profession. How can we build doors, so to speak, from non-technical disciplines that have not been previously considered? So I think about sociology and psychology. What kind of aptitude do we need to understand and for people to have who can make good cybersecurity or IT professionals that may be worth exploring, and figure out how to bridge these skills and attract additional people to the field. What this means is also organizations should be casting a much wider net for talent. I know companies are no longer limiting their search only to applicants with certain backgrounds or certain security qualifications. I've seen companies be more open to the idea of recruiting candidates from tangential industries, sectors, and academic qualifications. That's a really good start. And another thing is thinking about instead of hiring recent college graduates with degree in cybersecurity, how do we work together to become better at spotting what skills and qualifications are transferable to cybersecurity and enticing these individuals into the career? As a system, the California community colleges are moving towards competency-based education, which means building in more experiential learning opportunities for our students. That is going to be key. Apprenticeships and internships are great examples of that. There's also a number of questions that we still need to more fully answer. Do we have a clear understanding of career paths? So that's a question for our industry partners. What does a typical career look like? What is the fluidity between the various sectors of IT and the flexibility that affords individual to move from one IT sector to another? How do you progress from an entry-level role to a senior role in cybersecurity? Our Systems Guided Pathways initiative is focused on removing these friction points in our system to better serve our students and to increase retention and success rates. And it's really important that we have a clear understanding and knowledge of the cybersecurity skills that organizations need for us to partner with our industry partners to really build robust and meaningful, relevant curriculum and skills for our students. We also need to better understand what is the actual length of education, the full cost of education to prepare for a cybersecurity career. This is really important for our students to know. And what are some career opportunities along the way while they're obtaining their credentials that they can also be earning a living in? As a system, we are also very focused on equity in serving our students. We have one of the most diverse student body in higher education in California. So I'm offering and making an open invitation to companies who are serious about addressing the equity issue in the cyber workforce to partner with us. Many of you know NSA and has this National Centers of Academic Excellence program that focuses on improving cybersecurity education in the US by encouraging colleges with cybersecurity degrees to meet a set of academic standards, which is developed by experts. That's a good place to start. We have a handful of colleges with cyber programs. We need a lot more of our colleges to become certified center of academic excellence. And I know one of our colleges, Long Beach City College, has achieved that. looking to support more colleges in achieving that credential. And we also need to look at how we create more extensive on-the-job training programs for the newly minted workers in the field. It's also an important component to this learning ecosystem that we're building. So why should people care about cybersecurity? We need to answer that question in terms that anyone can understand. To solve the problem of cybersecurity workforce shortage, we need to build a strong ecosystem and create some common metrics to help employers understand programs, certificates, and degrees, and which are the most effective. I know many are also thinking about how to invest in modernizing the K-12 and higher ed curriculum. Keith mentioned that earlier, and finding ways to educate the masses. All of this takes really important partnerships, real and deep partnerships with industry, with education, with the community, which is not easy to do, but it's what we need to do to play the long game. So in closing, I'd like to ask you to join us, the California community colleges, and many of the other partners in identifying clear career pathways for our students, partner on the apprenticeship programs. We do have funding to support apprenticeship programs, build earn and learn programs, hire our students, provide them with on-the-job training. Most of us are essentially working online now, and this is a long game that we're playing, which means we really need to grow this important ecosystem. And we heard Amy Tong talk about the economic losses that we're experiencing, and it's just one reason that cybersecurity talent pipeline is so critically important to our economy. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Weber. Our next speaker is Dr. Sheila Thomas, Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Professional and Continuing Education for the California State University System.
Glad to be with you to discuss the California State University Professional and Continuing Education, or PACE, strategic priorities for cybersecurity under our theme Celebrating the Adult Learner from Education to Employment. The California State University is the nation's largest four-year university with 23 campuses serving 482,000 students, 53,000 faculty and staff, conferring over 100,000 degrees each year, with 3.8 million living alumni, and 1 in 10 employees in California is a CSU graduate. PACE serves working adults through degrees, certificates, and credentials based on student and industry need and demand on a self-supporting basis without any state financial support. Many working Californians will be faced with the need to change professions or at least upskill during their work lives. And California needs at least 1.5 million more BA educated people by 2030. So where does PACE fit? PACE offers degree completion and graduate programs, plus hundreds of professional development certificate programs in a variety of workforce and industry-specific fields. Next slide, please. One of these essential industry-specific fields is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity education is not new in the CSU. System-wide, there are centers of excellence, bachelor's degrees with specializations, master's degrees, credentials, and certificates. But COVID-19 has caused the lives of millions of Californians to be disrupted, including their pursuit of higher education. For many employees, this means delay in obtaining a certificate or credential so they can remain in or re-enter the workforce. Industry and employer partners tell us they need employees with the skills and knowledge for today as well as post-COVID. Next slide, please. Prior to COVID-19, but certainly accelerated by the pandemic, PACE has partnered with 3 essential California industry sectors: cybersecurity, life sciences, and fire service, who have urgent and emerging workforce needs. They are seeking our assistance in helping them train their incumbent and future statewide workforce. While each industry has unique needs, the synergies that emerged from multiple conversations solidified the basic premise: continuing education is the key to success. Campuses are aligning their interests and resources with one or more of the industry sectors in a regional consortium model. Across all three essential industry sectors, the initial offerings will include certificates, credentials, and degree programs for incumbent and new employees based on current and future workforce needs. Next slide, please. So we have organized the work around sectors, synergies, and priorities with our industry sector and priority leads through regional representation. In the area of cybersecurity, the industry prefers stackable professional certifications linked somehow with work experience, such as on-the-job training. While many have struggled to provide cybersecurity education, there are opportunities for incorporation of hands-on learning. As such, we are looking at two types of cybersecurity certificate programs to serve critical California essential workforce needs. First, programs directed at training entry-level positions with curriculum linked to on-the-job training. And second, in-service certifications in specific essential workforce sectors, including the life sciences, health and medical. Civil service sector includes public safety, service and emergency response, and support for small and medium-sized businesses. Next slide, please. Through implementation of these strategic priorities and working with our essential industry partners, we will positively impact the state workforce needs through a combination of innovative program development and regional consortia delivery. Providing additional options for those seeking to complete a degree or certificate will deliver further opportunities to improve their long-term economic and social mobility. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Our final speaker for this segment will be David Resting, Chief Information Security Officer, University of California, Office of the President.
Great, thank you so much. And I really want to thank the Secretary, Director, and Dr. Clement for inviting me to come talk today. I think there's so much, this is probably one of the biggest challenges in from my perspective, is really workforce development and getting the talent that is required in our university and also across our state and globally. So I have some observations. I've sort of taken a slightly tangential tack. I'm going to talk a little bit about basic stuff, but also the senior level skills that we look for when you're getting not just CISOs, but also senior level folks within cybersecurity. So you can kind of map a path for those that want to get into this career. So next slide, please. We've heard a lot about the size and scale. One of these reports says 3.5 unfilled jobs globally by next year. That is probably, you know, the numbers are there, and it is probably growing. As we have seen, regardless of the pandemic, we still need skills in this area. This is not going away anytime soon, and we as a collective need to work toward trying to close this gap and get our citizens and members of our community trained and educated and available to help us fight the never-ending wave of nation state and cyber criminals that threaten our continuity of our business. Next slide, please. So this is a slide I believe Intel put together in one of their reports, and just looking at some, you know, how do you get there? And part of it is we talk about non-traditional academics, and it's kind of odd, somebody from a university talking about non-traditional academics, but I would offer that we're already doing non-traditional things with certificate programs and internship programs and extensions and so forth. There's lots of different ways to get there. The challenge that I think many people have pointed out in the chat is that, you know, sometimes there are choke points or not enough resources to get folks the basic skills they need, as well as the opportunity to put those skills out there. And it goes to the diversity point. We have to cast a much wider and inclusive net to pull good candidates into our environment, train them, educate them, give them the enterprise IT skills and enterprise organization skills that they need to grow in their career. And obviously there's, you know, lots of jobs and lots of money, but the key is we really need to cast a very wide net in order to make things work for us. Next slide, please. So some of the top skills for cybersecurity engineers or friends at Career Karma have, all sorts of things you can look at, right? From programming to continuity planning to risk analysis. There's so much out there, and there are many programs out there that will give folks that training certification. There are online education services out there. It's really driven by the eagerness of the candidate, as well as some of their basic, interests and curiosities. Some folks are very interested in cloud security. Some folks are in penetration testing. All these things sit in the world. And as you go through your career, next slide, please. You may want to go to a senior level position. And I use the term CISO here, but this could be any senior security director position. And traditionally they're technologists, they're guardians, right? They have a long history in tech, and they also understand I got to protect things. But they really need to move to be strategic and advisory. And these are skills that you actually sort of need to develop throughout your entire career. Even when you were a junior person or starting out, you got to think long term. You have to also look to being advisor and collaborative with people. And we've seen a shift in this over the years, and it is really, really important to work through and develop skills on the strategic and advisory front. Next slide, please. And, I look around, I was like, how we are so challenged for time and taking things in. And Joyce Bracaglia, who's a recruiter in this area, had a little clip on one of the information security media groups presentations. And it's actually pretty good. It kind of goes over a lot of they talk about the senior level skills that they're looking for. But as I'll go through in the next slide, there are many things up. I said next slide, and they put it right there. That's fine. She really goes over a lot of things that we need in also anybody's work competency bag, not just for senior level folks, but these are very applicable to that. Next slide now, please. Thank you. So some of those things beyond just the technology, we need people that can strategically think. They need to be able to think in a longer, broader fashion. And kind of know where we are and where things are going. And at the same time, critical thinking. And I've seen in the chat a lot of folks talk about how do we, what are the soft skills? What are the things people need? It is today more than ever, it is very hard to discern sometimes what is fact, what is fiction, weaning through information sources. Cybersecurity is no different, right? There's different perspectives and opinions. Critically think, and how can you work through that information to come up with a good understanding of the things that are feeding into your strategic plan. Understanding business impact. This also understand, when I say business impact or mission impact, because many of us have a very strong mission-driven culture. Do you understand your company and your organization and your institution? Are you able to articulate what they do, the value they provide, and what the impact of cyber risk management and cybersecurity is to them? I think that's a very key thing. The ability to scale. We are in a global world. Scaling thinking is very good, because if you think about, it's sometimes very easy to do something by yourself or with a small group of people, but when you want to make it work at large scales, as we do in the state, you can't just have a 1-to-1 ratio of adding people for work. It just doesn't, it's not effective and it doesn't work. And so you look for things around scaling. Resiliency, the saying we have is you don't control the threat, you control your readiness. And so are you developing skills to be resilient, not just for your organization, but for yourself? Something bad happens, a breach happens. How are you responding? How are you bringing the organization back? How are you taking yourself out of a defensive role to a more proactive role in trying to move and lessen the impact of attacks and breaches on your institution? I think communication is very important, especially at the board level. I think communication is always important. That's a soft skill. Relationship development is very key, because you're dealing with people just like yourself, different opinions, different perspectives, and it's very important to communicate, listen, understand, and then also be able to translate that into something understandable for people who do not live in the IT and cyberspace world. Just because we all have smartphones and computers and tablets and online accounts and all that, it doesn't mean people have a technical understanding nor the understanding of the threats that may be coming at them and the impact to their mission. And finally, collaboration. I can't emphasize this enough. No person is an island. We really need to collaborate together. You need to foster that skill. You need to learn that. And I saw a comment in the chat about, how to being an apprentice or an intern help. Part of it's getting that experience in a enterprise organization or specific industry, be it healthcare or food services or retail or whatever it might be, to understand how those businesses work, how they flow. And so that's a skill that I think is very important, because you build upon that through your entire career. You are always collaborating over and over and over again. Next slide, please. And finally, a couple resources. We focus quite a bit on diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a Women in Tech initiative out of UC Berkeley, which I think is great and a good path into finding opportunities in the cyberspace. There's also the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, which has a plethora of information and events that help folks understand and get that strategic thinking of where things are going in the cybersecurity arena. UC Extension, we have multiple extensions at multiple campuses. I've listed Irvine, Davis, and LA here, but many boot camps for learning cybersecurity in our environment. And finally, the Inroads program, and the Inroads program basically it enables us to get underrepresented populations into our programs. We actually work through them to have them pull, in some cases, our interns and other folks to give them the opportunities in cybersecurity. I've done this in my office for the past several years and gotten some great candidates who have gone on to good high road jobs, as the secretary mentioned. I think this is a really good program. There's other ones out there in the market as well. But again, sometimes it's not enough to put just, I'm looking for an intern or this or that. You actually have to make a concerted effort to pull from those underrepresented populations, show them that there's a opportunity there, and get them in the door so that they can get those skills, get that experience, and grow in our environment. So with that, I wanted to again thank everybody, and glad to take any questions in the Q&A as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Dr. Clement, you're up next with the Q&A. I can see you.
Great. So I have a pair of questions in the Q&A. The first one is, what efforts are being put into place to recruit highly qualified instructors for all of these programs across all grade levels? And that's from Carol. I gotta tell you, Carol, that is an essential problem that we have here. That is that on the one hand, we are talking about increasing the number of education programs, degree and certificate, across all levels of education. And I frequently hear one of the key issues is their ability to find instructors at all levels of education to teach computer science, to teach information technology, to teach cybersecurity. So actually, in the California Cybersecurity Workforce Development Education Strategy that we're putting forward, we actually have several recommendations that are directed at increasing instructor capacity to teach IT, computer science, and cybersecurity courses across all levels. They involve a variety of different strategies, but I will be happy to provide that document later at the end of the week to answer your question in a lot more detail. We could almost spend all day chatting about how to increase the number of educators. All of our programs need them. One way that we really like to see is have our public and our private sector folks that are working in the field spend some time in our classrooms, K-12 or college, university classrooms, either as educators or as mentors, or for some of the wraparound services like networking and those types of things. So I hope that answers your question, and in more detail, I'll be happy to go into that. Myron J. Curtis, how are you today? Are there processes in place that coordinate these efforts with the actions of the legislative and judicial branches to ensure that laws and interpretations are compatible with the training our professionals receive. You know, let's be clear that cybersecurity education as a workforce development issue has a tremendous effect on the ability to legislate and have secure judicial process, shall we say. So we really need to make sure that this is key, as well as the idea that in California we use the word privacy all the time. And with that in mind, this further includes the notion that their interpretations are compatible with the training professionals receive. I also see an email or a message from Costas. Hello, how are you today? Walking the walk is vital for apprenticeships. I asked the question for CIO Tong, how many apprenticeship positions are active in your department and what impediments to increasing that number? So actually, the California Department of Technology has been extraordinarily progressive in terms of this. So I don't know the number of apprenticeship positions. That's pretty specific of a question. But I'll tell you this, they have a variety of apprenticeship programs for existing California state employees that are able to take them into tech. And for example, the Z mainframe apprenticeship program is the first one that comes to mind. However, Costas, I am happy to get back with you offline and give you the answers to the questions the best that I can find, right? I don't know. Do I have any more questions? I see David here. Oh, I'm sorry, David. Are you around, David? If David Rusting is available, I have a question for you.
I certainly am.
So Z Serrano asks you, I have trained up many people with great soft skills into great InfoSec pros. Most of these people had no idea that they would do great in the field due to lack of exposure. How do we get more people access or exposed to the InfoSec life?
People think of cybersecurity and it's just, okay, it's computer stuff. I got to code, or computers. It's technology, or it's servers or cloud stuff. It's all techie. And what I try to expose people and realize, there are so many opportunities in what I would call tangential areas, in the areas of law, in the areas of insurance, right? There's cybersecurity insurance, in the areas of healthcare and medical devices. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And so when you talk, about doing cybersecurity work, it sort of helps to move it from a purely techie IT thing, which you do need to have. It's really good to have the fundamental enterprise computing understanding and experience, but really to expose them that they may want to look in other industry verticals for opportunities, because there's a lot of horizontal skills that go across. So hopefully that answers the question to a certain degree. That exposure is really driven by trying to make them aware that it is not just a techie thing in tech companies. It is in large enterprise organizations. It's in small, mid-sized organizations. It's across the board. And so don't pigeonhole yourself or think, oh, if I want tech experience, I got to go to work for a tech company. The people who need the help the most, who are at the most risk sometimes, are the companies that are doing other types of work, but they need that good cyber experience. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, thank you very much. I do believe that the Q&A for the most part seems to be handled. I do apologize. Jim Cates has a quick question. Is there a way to get a list of companies who are willing to interview and give jobs to qualified minorities? Well, I think that there's a variety of ways that we would like to engage with companies, both in terms of access to the selection and the hiring process, as well as making sure that qualified minorities and women have tremendous opportunities, both in terms of education programs that are accessible and available to them in their communities, that they will have the option to be, that they will be successful in, and then we need to be better at making the transition from a student to worker. And I think that's one of the reasons why the apprenticeship model and the pre-apprenticeship models both seem to work very well. So Jim, I hope that's an answer to your question. And if you would like additional information, please reach out to me, and we will give you a copy of the California Cybersecurity Education Workforce Development Strategy that discusses the ways that we are working to improve and enhance the number of qualified minorities in the IT and the cyber workforce in general. And Tina, thank you. We'd love to have a list of the participating companies as well. Thank you very much for all of that.